Hey YouTube, Kira Qualia here, bringing you all my Cardfight Vanguard Gastille Dark Irregulars standard deck profile for post-clan selection Volume 1. With a big help from my buddy Anthony letting me borrow the majority of his Dark Irregular cards, I'm bringing you the next lineup in my clan selection deck profile list. This one focusing on Gastille, which benefits from having more and more cards in its soul, like a good majority of all the different Dark Irregular cards that we've had for all the formats, including Premium and Standard. But this one is very interesting because it limits your opponent on some of the plays they can do, but also gives your own units benefit by also making your opponent choose the type of cards and abilities that they have for your units. So let's go ahead and get started with the deck profile. So with the main unit of focus being Evil God Bishop Gastille, on Vanguard at the beginning of your battle phase, you counterblast 1, draw a card, and your opponent chooses one of the following effects for every 5 cards in your soul. You perform the chosen effects in any order. All of your opponents, all of your now units get basically critical +1 until end of turn. Your opponent's Vanguard's power increases or decreases to 1 until end of turn. All of your opponent's auto abilities do not activate until end of turn. And your opponent chooses a card from his or her hand, puts it into the damage zone, face down. So you're basically making your opponent select for every 5 cards in your soul. So the ideal would be having 20 cards in your soul, because then your opponent will have to choose all 4 of these skills, making it so the auto abilities also apply to Sentinels, not being able to use the guard ability of your Sentinel. The additional critical is just extra pressure that this deck could definitely make use of. And also the damage means that with that additional critical, they also have more of a fear now. Choosing a card from his or her hand means that they also won't perform the damage check, so no additional triggers to rely on. But also having the additional power decrease to 1, basically, they'll have a lot more to guard against, since also putting into use at the beginning of the battle phase any other abilities that would have given them power beforehand will also not take into effect. So it's a very, very scary card as long as you get your soul charge power set up. That's what our main focus is with a good majority of the rest of the deck. For the backup grade 3s, I also run 3 Abominable 1 Gildere. With this one on Vanguard or rear, when placed, counter +1, call a grade 2 or less card from your soul to rear. So it's just set up, and the fact that we can call a grade 2 or less from soul to rear just gives us more setup ability with the grade 2, depending on what we call out. Most of the time being either our Emblem Master or our Poisonic Abductor, which can just help more and more with all the different soul charging power. And on Vanguard or rear, when it attacks the Vanguard, if your soul has 10 or more cards, choose one of your opponent's rear guards and retire. The retire power, and why I also like to run Gildere as a backup grade 3, with Gastille focusing on Vanguard only. You have this card on your Vanguard circle, and then you want some good backup grade 3 rear guards, but still ones that can provide imaginary gift protect against your opponent, and that's where Gildere comes in handy. For the final spot for the grade 3s, I also just run 2 Charo Vampire, Vampire. On Vanguard Circle, having a power plus for every card in your soul of 1,000. And on Vanguard, when it attacks, you counterblast 1, stand one of your front row rear guards. If your soul has 13 or more, stand 2. So it's just another optional card for your main go-to grade 3. If you don't open up Gastille, I don't really prefer to ride Gildere. I like to have the option of Charo, with the majority of our grade 3s being good options, and other grade 3 search options. I just find it like a good backup to your main go-to grade 3. And that is it for the grade 3s. We'll now move on to the grade 2s. One of our main ones in the deck is Poisonic Abductor. On Vanguard or rear, when placed, counter +1, discard a card from your hand. Search your deck for up to 3 grade 2 or less normal units with the same card name. Put 2 cards from among them into your soul and call the rest to rear, and shuffle your deck. With this card, you have options for soul setup, because one of our main go-to grade 1s is great for having the name of the same card in soul for that setup, which we'll go to when we go over the grade 1s. And the fact that it's just a counterblast and a discard from your hand is just more of the investment for the drop zone with the other unit that I'm speaking of. But also just for more and more soul charge power, just like the original one during the Premium and G format, I run 4 Emblem Master, having the same soul charge power basically on Vanguard or Guard Circle. If your soul has 7 or more cards, this unit gets plus 5,000 power or plus 5,000 defense to continuous. So always retaining this power just makes it that much more difficult to defeat this card, depending on what deck it's going up against. But on Vanguard or rear, when placed, counter +1, search your deck and drop zone for a total of 3 cards with the same name, put it into your soul, and if you search your deck, shuffle your deck. So this just gets rid of other pesky cards, thinning the way for your triggers, but also giving you options for basically setting up the same card names in your soul to work with that grade 1 we spoke of before. And the more cards you put in your soul, the easier it is for Gastille to basically be set up later on with all your different grade 2 powers. With the final card for the grade 2 lineup being Demonted Executioner. On Vanguard Circle, when it attacks a grade 2 or greater unit, this unit gets plus 5,000 till end of battle, so just a good way to hit against some of the imaginary gift force units, focusing on the plus 5 power. And on Vanguard or Rear, when placed, counter +1, soul charge 3. If you do soul charge one or more trigger units, you draw a card. So it benefits from the fact that you're more likely going to soul charge a good amount of triggers with this unit, just giving you a benefit of a draw, which you can definitely use because you invest a good amount of your cards into cards like your Poisonic Abductor, so having more and more in your hand to guard against your opponent with. You do draw with Gastille, so just remember that you have this option available to you. Also, Demonic Executioner just becomes the more ideal ride target compared to some of your other grade 2s we run in the deck. And that is it for the grade 2s. We'll now move on to the grade 1s. I stated before basically about how important it is to have the proper grade 3. So to help with that, I'm running 4 Succubus of Pure Love with it. During your turn, if one or more of your cards is put into your soul by a card's ability, this unit gets plus 5,000 power. So most of the time you're going to have this ability go off and have the additional plus 5. And on Vanguard or Rear, when placed from hand, look at 5 cards from the top of your deck, reveal 1 grade 3 from among them, put it into your hand. If you put a card, you discard a card from your hand. So with the search power, it's just the more ideal way to get Gastille into your hand to use. So having this option available to you after you use this card, you could then potentially soul charge this card into your soul using some of your other cards like Emblem Master or even your Poisonic Abductor, because not having a need for it basically after you have the boosted power, it just makes use as being a preferred card to use for the 13,000 power it could boost with for some of your other units on the field. And the one I was speaking of before with the soul charge power is Variance Killer Tail. On Rearguard Circle, once per turn, rest this unit. Put a card from your damage zone or drop zone into your soul. If you put a card from your damage zone, put the top card of your deck into your damage zone face down. If your soul has 3 Variant Killer Tails, you countercharge 1 and stand this unit. So it makes up for the rest of this card for the recycle power for your rest unit. And then also just being able to restand it and countercharge makes up for some of the other cards that countercharge pretty heavily in this deck, whether it be Gastille or even for your Emblem Master or your Poisonic Abductor. You have both the options available to you, and the fact that it restands mean that you can just basically attack or boost with this card afterwards. It does have 6,000 power, eliminating it for that, but most of the time I just like to use it for the boosted power with one of our other grade 2s or 3s on the field, especially Gilded or Emblem Master, you name it, as long as it has enough power to hit against your opponent's Vanguard. And lastly, for the grade 1s, I also run 4 Ironheart Assassin. On Rearguard, when attack or boosts, you may soul charge 1. If you soul charge and have 3 or more Ironheart Assassin in your soul, you countercharge 1, which is a good other target to run and rely on for the soul charge power of some of our other grade 2s. Having the 3 in the soul and the fact that we can work with the damage zone as well for soul charging some cards makes it so we'll guarantee most of the time get this card into the soul that much quickly. And when rode upon, you may call this card to rear, setting it up on the rear guard for those additional setups. And then if our opponent does retire this card, just more and more fodder to then soul charge back into the soul to use while still giving us a resource that was once on the field for our plays. And then that is it for the grade 1s. Moving on to the grade 0s, going with the Werefletter Ordonnance. I just think it's the cooler of the starters used during G-Series, which was with Charot and Gilded, and also Gastille, focusing on the diff ride units during that series, and still having the quick shield and draw power all together for this unit. For the trigger lineup, I'm actually going with the 10 critical just for a little more extra pressure. We do have the protect markers as well as the additional sentinel option. So for Werelux Gefrader and also for Dark Knight of Nightmareland for the normal triggers in the deck. For the sentinel options, I'm running 2 of the One-Eyed Succubus and 2 March Rabbit of Nightmareland. The guaranteed draw and then also just the draw power in general is a nice touch for sure, but just having this additional critical option when we drive check with Gastille for pressure against our opponent is why I like running this sentinel option also. And like I said, with the protect markers, we still have the guaranteed perfect guard options when we ride into our grade 3 Vanguard. And then lastly, just the heal trigger of choice by my buddy Anthony. Also Nightmareland, I definitely do think it's one of the more cuter heal triggers also. And just like I said, they're all the same heal triggers, just player preference on which one you want to choose. I was also a big fan of this card when it was released in set 7 of the original Cardfight Vanguard sets. And that is it for the deck profile. I hope you all enjoy the video. Definitely one of the more funner decks for Dark Irregulars, not really focusing so much on restanding power, and like I said, just more limiting what your opponent can do with their play. So if you're looking for a more affordable deck from the clan selection, this is definitely one to look into. But until next time, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, and Kira Qualia out.